Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hope you are well. My name is Rachel Adams. I'm the Chief Curator and Director of Programs at the Bemis Center.
I'm Jared Packard. I'm the Exhibitions Manager here at the Bemis Center.
Okay. And we're sorry about our technical difficulties, but hopefully you all can see us and hear us, and other people can join us in a few minutes. So this is our Collaging New Worlds collage workshop that we are doing. We're sitting inside of Claudia Weiser's exhibition here at Bemis Center. And we actually opened this exhibition right when COVID started, unfortunately, and everyone went to shelter in place. So really no one has seen this show. We've done a couple of things. There is an Instagram live video. You can watch a talk between Claudia and myself as we tour through the exhibition. But we're going to show some images of the exhibition right now. I don't know, whoever's joining us, if you are local and you got one of our collage bags, that's awesome. If you have stuff at home, that's great. We're gonna go through some images of Claudia's work, and then we're gonna show a video of her talking about her collage practice, and then we'll delve in here. Yeah,
we're gonna get started making, but feel free to get your supplies out as we start looking at some images and hearing what Claudia has to say about collage.
Yeah. So Shayla, could you just turn your computer towards me so I can see which images are up? Okay, great. This exhibition is titled Claudia Weiser Generations, and it spans about 7 years of Claudia's practice. Claudia is an artist based in Berlin. She has actually, her degree is in art, but she trained as a blacksmith and also worked in theater production. So her work is sort of multi-dimensional. She obviously works on the wall, as well as, with sculpture, and she uses different materials, ceramics, mirror. She does a lot of drawings and works on paper that way, as well as sculpture that are sort of made of wood or I already mentioned ceramics. She's very influenced by architecture and design, specifically the Bauhaus, which was a school in Germany in the early part of the 1900s. And yeah, she just sort of has this really hands-on practice. Everything is sort of handmade, either by her or by other artisans that she works with. This last image is actually the sort of entranceway to the exhibition, where you can see some of her wallpaper, as well as a bench that was produced and put together here, but all the hand-painted tiles were made in her studio in Berlin. And I'm trying to, this is the last image, right? A little bit more about her practice is that she's obviously influenced by the everyday and history. So a lot of the collage pieces are images of antiquities, Roman and Greek antiquities, sculpture, as well as some of her own photographs that she's taken, or found photographs that she's made, or found photographs that she's found in thrift stores or flea markets, and that kind of thing, as well as her own sculptural practice. So you can kind of see in this image that behind us, and you'll see it again later, is sort of this sculpture is an image of her work that she's photographed and then inlaid into her collage practice. So a lot of things going on there, and really rhythmic and dramatic. So I think that's a good place to stop.
That's great, yeah.
And so, why are we drawn to collage? We're going to share Claudia's video. We'd love to also hear from you at the end if you have questions or even just comments and thoughts, so you can chat those into the chat box. But personally, why I'm interested in collage is always being able to create these new stories, right? And use other things, other people's images, textures and shapes and colors, and even just pieces of paper, to sort of create these rhythms, and say something new that me, especially when I was a practicing artist, I actually can't draw or paint. So collage was something that I was really drawn to, because I was able to actually make things visually without having to draw them or paint them myself, because I'm terrible at that. I don't know.
No, it's great. That's exactly why I'm drawn to it too, because there's no requirement for a technical skill. It's just using your imagination to recombine and reimagine things that are already in our world. But maybe we can jump in and hear a little bit directly from Claudia about why she's drawn to collage and how she's come up with some the wallpaper that we've shared some images with you already.
Chaotic at the moment because I work on 2 other shows. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit about my wallpapers, which you see right now in the Beamer Center, and about the origin, how I find the imagery, and why, did I get to that point that I made wallpapers. I look on my list as well because that's a little bit of a strange situation because there's nobody I can talk to really. I just talk into the camera. But when I first started to make art, I was very interested to change the neutral white exhibition space or change the atmosphere of it. When the viewer enters it, that I create some kind of other world where you step a little bit beside yourself and find another environment. So I started just with black and white copies, wallpapering the walls, often the complete space, and hanging artworks on top of it, which was a very easy way to change the space without a big effort or money, and the motive of that wallpaper was actually more light and shadow, like squares, abstract shapes, which I got just with a scanner and transparent papers, basically. So I experienced that a lot and worked with it, and at one point I thought it would be interesting to include also imagery which I'm attracted to as a figurative narrative image, which also tell more than just abstract forms and shapes, and that's how it started to make this type of wallpaper you see right now in the Beamers. And the imagery, which I collect a lot of old photographs, for example, or I get them on flea markets or eBay. Sometimes I find them also in online archives or old books. And as like, for example, I have photos here like, difficult. This is a photo of a Greek sculpture in Athens, in Acropolis, and I liked very much about that the quality of the photo itself, that it's so contrasty, that the feed becomes so incredibly theatrical in a way. And of course, I like also the implication of human history, because these are already a few thousand years old. And I think it's very interesting that we nowadays still deal with the same or similar problems like we did in the past, or that history is working in circles in a way. So I just find these photos and then I see the quality of the image and I want to use that and combine that with other images. That could be just ornaments, it could be photos of my own artwork, and it can be also photos I make in the world now. So like from people or architecture or whatever. And then I just, I'm not really working in this with collages in the sense that I really cut out and glue images together or parts of images. I work on the computer then, because I don't, first of all, I don't want to destroy the original photos I find, because they are often very old and have a value for me. And also I enlarge them anyway on the computer. That's why I have to anyway work digitally. But of course, I'm very much attracted to the technique of collage because I think it's fascinating. And I discovered that, for example, in the Bauhaus archive in Berlin, or in Germany, we have a long history of making collages that started with modernism and Dada and yeah, at that time. And I think I still love these collages very much. But I decided for myself that I'm not making collages which are just a sheet of paper. I want to use it in a bigger space to create an atmosphere where the viewer is completely surrounded by it, basically. What else? Yeah, the selection of images, I talked already about it. At the end, for me, it's just important that these combination of different images tell a new story, have also a visual quality and an aesthetic quality in terms of composition and contrast and balance and whatever, but also tells a story, of course. So yeah, what else? It would be nice if I get questions now, but I don't. So I just hope you got a little impression on my work and thoughts. And yeah, I hope, yeah, that's, for example, another image I like very much. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the workshop and have a good time. Bye.
Thank you, Claudia. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm antsy to start making. So let's just quickly go over what you're gonna need in order to start collaging. First of all, some of you may have received a craft bag with stuff that we delivered to your doorstep. Some of you may not have, and that's okay because you can really use anything around the house to collage. I think the first thing that we're gonna use is a base to start applying things to. And I have here a plain white paper. It's a good place to start, but it's a little bit firm. You can see how it has a little bit of a hardness to it. And that's nice because it means that you can stack things on it, put glue on it, and it's not gonna wrinkle or warp at all. So that's a good place to start. In order to get going, you also need something to cut, so some scissors, and something to stick. So we have here Elmer's glue stick. But you can also use like juicy glue, liquid glue. I don't know what that is, but tape. You can also use tape. And I think that's what's awesome about collage is that there's no rules. You can really draw from anything in your vicinity. So in terms of some things that you can get started, a great place to start is magazines. So if you have some leftover magazines, you can start cutting those up. Here's a good example of I love this hand here with some jewelry on it. So I might cut that out a little bit later. Also text is really fun. So if you see any kind of slogans or titles or individual letters, that's a great thing that you can start drawing from. I also really like a diversity of textures and colors when I'm working in collage. So this is a good example of, I love this geometric grid pattern here, which starts to, yeah.
Shauna Horowitz, I love her work.
Is that an artist? I don't know, Shauna, but I like what she's putting down right here. So just some basic craft paper of different colors that you can start chopping up.
Yeah,
and
old images too are really nice. Like some of these black and whites mixed with some color ones could be great.
And that's a really good point because I think part of what collaging is exciting to me is that you get to pull from really different worlds so that you can take this vintage image of a lunar landscape and combine it with a beautiful high luxury ring in the same place in the same image. So Rachel's gonna go ahead and get started, and you should definitely get started too. While you start making, we thought this would be really cool to look at a couple of artists who have been working in collage both contemporary and historical artists to help give you some ideas of different approaches you can use and different concepts that you can apply to your own collage. So the first artist we're going to talk about is going to jump up on your screen is Hannah Hopp. She was a German art Dadaist. She was working in kind of the early 20th century, in the teens and the 20s. And she was affiliated with a group called the Dadaists because really what they were doing was kind of injecting this surrealist, this kind of dissonant attitude towards art making, which is what led Hannah to collaging. So if you think about the history of art making before that, it was very technically oriented. It was about creating an image that looked exactly like the person that you were painting or exactly like the landscape that was in front of you. And for Hannah to go, I don't want to make something that looks real or looks representational. Instead, she said, I want to combine things that already exist in the world. And they don't have the unique brushstroke or my unique hands of the artist that you might see in a painting. Instead, she's kind of stepping back and saying, I'm going to let the images do the talking. I'm going to let the way that they relate to each other convey the message. So this image here is of two women. One of them on the right kind of has, it looks almost like a fairy with maybe some kind of African mask. I don't know exactly where it's from. Maybe some kind of wings. And then there's a woman on the left who has a big old nose and a tiny little body. And up in the sky, it's kind of this fantastical sky world where there's ballet slippers jumping, prancing around up in the sky. So this is a great example of how you can create your own fantastical world. There's no rules, there's no limitations. And something that I really like about what Hannah's done is she was working in a time when women in particular didn't have a lot of authority. They weren't given a lot of space to raise their voice and advocate for themselves. So what she's doing here is she is representing a woman that's compiled from lots of different sources. In some ways, it's kind of like a surgery or like a Frankensteining of different things all into one imagined woman creature. And it makes me think a little bit about, like, I don't know if anyone's ever told you, oh, you have your father's nose, or you have the personality like your sibling. And it's a reminder that, you know, we are a compilation of the people around us, and we are a product of lots of different sources, both in media and magazines and the people in our personal lives. I think Hannah really captures that really well in this image.
Someone was wondering the full name of the artist.
The full name of the artist is Hannah Hopp. It's spelled Hannah, H-A-N-N-A-H, Hopp, H-O-C-H. And the O has a little umlaut over it, but I don't know how to type that. So
You have to hold the O down and then it'll show.
thanks. So we're going to look at another artist, Romare Bearden. So this image is, I really love this collage. This is titled Three Folk Musicians, and Romare Bearden made it in 1967. And in this image, it's not purely sourcing materials. There is some paint in there, there's some colored, there's some drawing in there, as well as cut up collage paper and images. And something that I like about this is that it represents Romare Bearden's like unique environment at the time. He was working in Harlem in New York, a neighborhood that was celebrated for the Harlem Renaissance, where African-American culture was exploding with creativity and new ideas. And a big part of that Renaissance was the investigation of jazz music and blues music. And so here we see three folk musicians who were so prevalent in that neighborhood that Romare Bearden was working in. And what I really like is how the visuals of this piece kind of begin to echo the qualities of jazz music. So in jazz music, it has really arrhythmic melodies. It has, sometimes they'll introduce a phrase of music, and then they'll riff on it, they'll change it over the course of the song. It'll take on new colors and new iterations over the course of the song. And I feel like Romero Bearden is kind of doing that in this image. If you look at the character on the left, you see these like blue vertical stripes. And then in this figure in the center, those stripes kind of take on a new orientation. They go left to right. And so you begin to see these relationships between passages, visual passages of color and texture, the same way you might find that in a jazz song. Also, I think it's interesting, we're talking about collaging new worlds or imagining a new place. And in this, Romero Bearden is combining a traditional European guitar that you or I might be familiar with, and the character on the far right, he's holding an African banjo. And so Romero Bearden is kind of acknowledging the combination of his own history, having had ancestors from Africa, being through the slave trade transported to America, where they encountered European traditions. So this painting really, or this collage painting, really kind of summarizes a lot of what Romero Bearden's culture and thinking was at that time. Rachel, you've been having a chance to make some collages for yourself. Do you want to show us what you've been up to?
Sure.
While I was talking.
One more little piece I'm gonna stick on right here. So I don't know. I guess I'm more of like a traditional image combiner and less in terms of the way that Hannah or Romir, because I'm on a first name basis with them, make their collages, but really just kind of finding things, in this craft bag that our lovely assistants Shayla and Casey put together for us. Just really interesting images, places and people, and also textures with some of these papers that were in there. I also liked the way that some of them were torn out, so I kind of left that. I decided not to use the scissors and keep these sort of torn edges to kind of, again, create another layer of things maybe. This might be done, I'm not sure. I'm gonna sit with it for a second, but yeah, just really enjoying kind of combining things and thinking about, obviously, there's a very outdoorsy vibe to this. This is from a Louis Vuitton ad, which is so funny. I don't know where most of these other images are from, but just sort of, thinking, I guess my mind is on the landscape right now a little bit. And I am sitting across from one of Claudia's beautiful tapestries that is of this landscape. So there might be something to that as well, sort of thinking about when you're in your environment. Okay, you're gonna work and I'm gonna talk about a couple other artists. Yeah. Shayla, are we good? Okay, so this artist right here is it Deborah? Deborah Roberts. Deborah Roberts is an artist living in Austin, Texas. And she's actually going to be having a big solo exhibition, I think in January, down in Austin at the Contemporary. So if you are in that neck of the woods, you should go see her work. Deborah is an artist who is definitely inspired by Romero Bearden and by even Hannah Hoff, thinking about the two people that we just talked about earlier. She's really critiquing notions of beauty and the body, race and identity through the lens of African-American children. So that's a big focus of her work, is African-American children, both girls and boys. Obviously, this is a group of all boys. And of course, now I'm not remembering the title of this work, unfortunately, which is very bad of me. But looking at this group of kids and seeing the layers. Excuse me. Deborah occasionally bases her work off living or historical people, but she uses the same things that we're using here, like photographs and magazines, literature, obviously the internet, to really combine all of these things. And she also does a little bit of her own hand painting. So that is something that we are not doing here, but you can definitely bring in is painting. And
can you repeat the artist's name?
her name is Deborah Roberts. And there was actually just a really good New York Times article about her a few weeks ago, so you could that probably will pop up if you Google her. But as you can see in this image, kind of these kids look like they're wearing very contemporary clothes, and I really love how she sort of superimposes body parts on some of the faces, so you can kind of see the mouth or the eyes from a different image or photograph or something like that. So sort of thinking about doing things like that, which I think happened a little bit in this beautiful collaboration by Casey and Shayla. So that's a really great way to do things. But I do think it's also really nice what Deborah does is keeps a lot of negative space. So something that I did not do here, oh wait, you're not sharing, sorry, never mind, don't worry about that, we'll show it in a second. But just looking at Deborah's piece, there's a lot of white space, so negative space is what we call that. And that adds to like a lot of the drama and not having a background, right? Not adding to what already is there, which is like these very colorful kids sitting down. Obviously one of them with their hands up, which is, you know, speaking a lot to our time right now.
Do you know if the shirts are painted paper or cut from color paper?
In this particular one, I think it's a combination, but I can't tell you because it actually, when you look at the image, it is hard to see. And the materials mentions paint and collage materials, so I actually don't know. And that's what's really great about being able to see her work in person, honestly, is that you can kind of see what might be paper and what might be cut paper and what might be painted. So our next artist is the great Robert Rauschenberg. So many of you might be familiar with Rauschenberg. Another artist similar to Claudia that worked in all different ways, right? Painting, sculpture, collage, even collaborated with people like Merce Cunningham to do sets for performances. So what I really love about his work is, you know, creating all of these, you know, bringing all together these different images. You know, he was really prevalent, you know, in the 60s and 70s with this collage work. You know, here on the left side, you see, you know, an image of Kennedy superimposed in there. And he's really actually like aggravating the paper too, which is something that's kind of interesting and something that when I was back in the day an artist, I would do a lot. You could take like matte medium, which is like kind of like a glue-ish thing, and cover an image and then like rub it onto a paper and pull it back off, and that'll like, you know, release some of that image onto the paper. So there's sort of that thing that that's really fun to do, which I think is a technique that he might be using similar here. You know, he really brought together like just the bombardment of images in everyday things in popular culture, just objects from everyday life, and then really like thinking about surface. And he would also do a lot of silk screen. So you would silk screen onto maybe a canvas or a board and then also add collage onto that. Or you can see on the piece on the right side, there's actually like a sculpture hanging off of that. And so bringing in that sculptural element too and building off of the back of the collage and creating more of an assemblage, which is something that he was really known for. So, yeah. All right, Jared.
Well, so I've been working while Rachel was generously sharing some thoughts about those artists. I was working on this piece here, and I was drawn to that orange grid that we were looking at earlier. And I thought that that was a really cool contrast to this, like, clips of this painting, which was it almost looks like a Monet painting or something. It was very expressive and a lot of brush strokes. And I thought that that contrast was really interesting to have something hard edge and geometric next to something that was really expressive. Then I found this texture, little zoom up close to of grains of wood. And I thought that that pattern kind of reminded me of the ripples in the painting. So I thought it was cool to find those visual relationships and throw them into the same space together.
Yeah, and a lot of our imagery is actually coming from the Bemis stash of old art magazines that we have upstairs. So obviously there's a lot of art references, but you know, that doesn't necessarily, you know, you might not have that around the house, but you know, for something like this, which, you know, might relate a little bit more to Deborah's work and having that negative space and really like making an action happen in a different kind of way. So that's really great. And then there's also this other good example of sort of like geometric and like spatial and like thinking about architecture and like combining all of these different types of architectural building elements too, which I think is really wonderful. So there's just so many things that you can do with collage. Like, I don't know, I forgot how much I love doing this, and now I'm really enjoying it. I want to make another one.
Yep, keep going. Make another one while I talk about the last artist that we want to hopefully inspire you to continue making. This artist's name is Wangechi Mutu. She is from Kenya, and she makes really powerful work. drawing images from magazines, much like we are. And she mixes images from magazines with really textured painting techniques. So in this image, you can see kind of on the bottom left-hand part of the image, there's almost like this bubbly effect, and I think she does that with kind of like watercolors. I don't actually know exactly what materials, but I would imagine kind of like a really watered down kind of pigment, perhaps. But one thing that I think is really interesting about what Mutu is doing is that she's creating representations of Black women, and she's doing it in a way that they're simultaneously kind of alien and a little bit scary, but they also are really seem powerful and strong to me. And so, you know, if you look closely at the face of this figure, it looks like a tiger's head, which is, of course, you know, a creature that we associate with strength and power, and overlaid with are these big lips, and you can see the eyes looking up into the sky. And when I see this figure, I think about you know, something that's aspirational, almost like this figure, this woman's looking up at a tall mountain that she's about to climb and conquer. Maybe she's looking up into the sky like almost like a superhero or something, right? About to take flight. So I think it's kind of like part of what Mutu's doing here, I think, is interesting because she's using materials and images taken from kind of pop culture magazines, which frequently don't represent Black women. And so by taking disparate sources like that and creating her own imagined powerful Black women, she is kind of inserting herself as a Black woman, an African woman, into that narrative, into that space where those voices aren't really being heard as loudly as they need to be. So I guess that's our last artist that we wanted to talk about.
Can you spell her name?
Yeah, it's a hard name. I'm gonna write it out for you and hold it up because. Or,
Shayla's
yeah, you do that. We're gonna use our problem-solving skills here, guys, and we're gonna use technology to communicate to you.
Next time we will make sure that the artist name is on the slide, which is something we just forgot to do.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We were preparing. Yeah, so that's our last artist we wanted to share with you, but obviously there are so many more that we could even like mention right now. That's probably, do you want to share a few more
Yeah,
examples?
I guess I just wanted to share one other example. One thing that we didn't really get a chance to talk about was using like text and lettering as a kind of technique. And I think this is a nice little example where there's some text here. What does it say? Yikes. And so I think like text is another way of combining something that, you know, text is what we always see is really flat on the page, but putting it over something that's really spatial and has depth is another way of kind of confounding and confusing space that's unique to collage.
Yeah. And here is just one more, which is sort of like a monochromatic, you know, one-toned kind of collage. And this one is really, I feel like, wonderfully riffing off of some of Claudia's influences of, you know, busts and architecture and sculpture. So I really, Casey, nice job on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, are there any other questions besides names of artists, which we're happy to answer?
One question was, would you consider fabric quilt made from pieces of fabric combined into patterns a collage? If yes, why aren't these included in collage exhibitions?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I think that some people would consider things like fabric quilting and, you know, that kind of thing as a collage work or as an assemblage. But some people might think that it's more about more like sort of paper material or canvas. But, you know, I think that honestly, like just the combining of different materials. So it might be that if there's some fabric combined with some paper, that might signify it being more of a collage than if it's just sort of fabric together. But that's a really good question, and I would be interested to know what the Quilt Museum people in Lincoln think about quilts as collages.
Yeah, let's add the Quilt Museum.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that I wonder about, which again is a great question, I don't have an answer too. But I also think about utility and function. And I think a lot of people see textile work and quilts as something that, you know, you can use it. It's something that goes on a bed or in a domestic setting. And so unfortunately, within the history of art, there has been kind of like a separation between things that are pure aesthetic objects and things that have a utility to them. And I think your question starts to poke at a really important broader question, which is that like things that are incorporated in our everyday life can be as important art objects as things that go on the wall of a museum.
Yeah, I agree. Good question. Are there any other questions that?
One thing that I wanted to share with you guys as you continue making, maybe not right this instant, but we're making a mess over here and we're loving it. And I want to know what kind of mess you're making. We want to see what you're doing.
Yes.
So if you want to send us your creations, you can tag our Instagram handle at Bima Center and or hashtag Collaging New Worlds. If you post it onto social media, we would love to see what you're up to and see any responses to the things that we're talking about or the artists, or see how they might be inspiring your own creative projects.
Yeah. And one other thing that we didn't really talk about, but you know, now we're in this time of COVID, and what I actually did with my son not that long ago was sort of, he did this painting and I cut them up and sent them as postcards. So it's sort of like, especially if you're doing something on that, something that's a little harder, you could totally, you know, I mean, not maybe this big of a postcard, but you could use it and sort of send it to your friends or your family and, you know, have an exchange, a little mail exchange that way, which is a whole nother, mail art is a whole other workshop that we could do maybe, but that could be something fun to also do with your collages if you're wanting to share them with some people, but maybe not the entire world of social media.
Yeah, if you want to see us do a mail art workshop, add us.
Exactly.
We're here for recommendations, and we want to make stuff.
Yeah, this has been really actually very fun.
Yeah, totally.
Any other questions, Casey and Shayla?
No?
Okay. Well, we are really hoping that we will open this exhibition to the public soon. So just really stay tuned, follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter if you aren't already, but we're assuming that you are since you are joining us on Zoom, which is great. So just kind of keep following us, and we're really hoping that later in the summer we will be open. This exhibition, as well as Liv Schulman, which is our other exhibition, are on view through August 15th at this point. So we are hoping to get some people in here to see them. Other things that are happening, we have a virtual performance on Thursday night. So you can view that via Facebook, via Instagram Live, and also on our Twitch channel. So all of that information is on our website. Derek Higgins is an amazing local artist, an Omaha-based artist, musician, and he'll be performing new and some older music on Thursday night starting at 8 p.m. So if you are looking for something to do Thursday night, we have that. And then also on Saturday night, we have another performance. It's Summer Solstice, and we've enlisted the duo Matmos that are based in Baltimore. So they're actually going to be live broadcasting from their studio in Baltimore, again, starting at 8 p.m. on those channels as well. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I think we're sending a newsletter tomorrow as a reminder. So those will be two other fun things we're doing this week.
Yeah, this is a total blast, and I hope that we're really excited to see what kinds of stuff you made from this.
Yeah, please don't forget to hashtag Collaging New Worlds
Collaging
and at Bima Center, and we're gonna be on the lookout for what you've made. Okay, well, thank you again for joining us.
Take care.
And we'll hopefully see you soon.